Teachers of Reddit, can you tell who's popular and who's not in your class, or who gets bullied? I'm a young high school teacher football wrestling coach. I am very aware, and I try hard to make everyone feel accepted. Often the bullies are kids I coach. If the athletes in my class act like meatheads, I make it very clear that I won't put up with it. I've pulled many an athlete into the hallway during some downtime to let him know I saw him being ignorant to a student and it is in poor character. It rarely takes more than one of these conversations. Because of my position in the school, I have never had to so much as raise my voice, and still maintain a pretty laid-back atmosphere. I also spend most of my downtime reaching out to the kids that aren't popular. I talk indie music to the artsy types, and they often burn me CDs of their bands. Sometimes they even turn me on to a new group that ends up on my iPod. I watch far more crappy movies on Netflix than I probably should, so I sometimes spend my lunch period gabbing with the movie nerds in the cafeteria. I encourage students to use my work email at any time. I have a habit of answering through my phone even though I am off the clock, but my fiance is a teacher and she gets it. I spend so much time with the athletes after school and on the weekends. I almost find myself overcompensating during the school day so I don't come off as a caveman to my students that I don't coach. TLDR. I notice and try to be cool to everyone regardless of interest or clique, regardless of the impact on my reputation amongst the jocks. The legendary cool teacher. I thought it was a myth. When my mother was a teacher, a lot of her kids would actually pass gossip along to her, even if she told them not to tell her, so she knew who slept with who and who got drunk every weekend. So, yeah, she definitely knew. And even if you don't straight up tell a teacher things like that, I think it's pretty intuitive, at least to an extent. As a teacher, you can tell who the good-looking jocks are and who are the awkward nerds. You don't all of a sudden become numb to social stuff once you become a teacher. On the contrary, you probably pick it up better because you're constantly around that high school environment. I pick up a lot of cues at lunch, also recess for little kids. Sadly, a lot of teachers use that time to socialize among themselves instead of paying attention to the kids. The little kids used to tell me that they were glad when I was on duty, because I was the only one who would stop the fights. I was wondering if teachers pick up on things like this. Of course we do. If it's about popularity, we really don't care, and neither will you as you age. If it's about bullying, yes, we care, and we want to help. If a bully crosses the line, tell us, or tell the principal. Also, we freaking hate bullies. Half my junior high teachers were bullies. I'm a teacher. I pick up on it, but it's usually not as obvious as you'd think. The ones that are the most popular are usually not the ones who are the center of attention at school, and certainly not in class. It's more clear-cut who's popular among the boys than among the girls. I try to treat them like I would any other normal student, meaning no special attention, no privileges, but I'll also admit that I try to charm them, making them like me. It's a great tool to have the popular students on your side, as a long-term project to prevent bullying. I taught sex ed to 14-year-olds when I was in pre-med. Even though I didn't know the kids or didn't know any of their names, it was easy to see who the popular ones were, and even who was popular because the other kids feared him or her, and who was popular because the other kids genuinely liked him or her. I always talked with the kids about homosexuality and to keep them open-minded. The trick is to first ask the genuinely liked popular kid for his or her opinion, because that kid is the most likely to give his her actual opinion instead of what she thinks the class wants to hear. Seeing who was bullied was harder. There were always some kids who didn't really participate, but that may have been just shyness because of the sex talk. All we had for sex ed was one of the coaches stand in front of the class and read awkwardly from the pamphlet they'd just given us. No questions were allowed, no discussion, nothing. Good on you for actually making it an educational experience. I work as a teacher and a teacher's aide, which requires me to actually sit in class with the student and help them write their work out. I see a lot of things that the teachers don't normally see or hear. I see a lot of bullying in the classroom as well. I do my best to diffuse most situations without humiliating kids. Otherwise, I report them to the headmaster. I refuse to sit back and watch the social bulls of high school ruin some poor kid's life. Of course they do. I taught 4th grade. I could even tell which student was already on his way to becoming the stereotypical jock bully. Smart kid too. And yes, I did make a big effort to make him realize that harassing others is wrong. There was a lot of peer pressure working against him though. I don't think it ever stuck. On a more positive note though, one of my favorite students was the girl who never spoke a word during class. I noticed she had a Wizards of Waverly Place folder for her spelling, and one day I made a little note about the show in it. What? A 25-year-old guy can't like Disney Channel? Wanna fight about it? Every week when I took home the folders to grade the tests, I made sure to comment on this week's episode, or other Disney Channel related things, or something else in general. She did the same. She must have spoken about 50 words to me all semester, but I still felt like I knew her very well. This is awesome. I hope the girl is doing well. Seeing teachers go the extra mile for kids makes me feel the glow, man. More or less, yes. However, I know that at least in the boarding school I'm currently teaching in my country, some kids can be both popular in one group and be detested in another. The effeminate kids who had tons of girlfriends, but no boys will want to work with them. For example, being associated with effeminate boys is an effeminate thing in itself. Boys would say harsh words to these kids in my class or outside, and girls would defend them. Teachers, most, if not all teachers except me here are religious Muslims, and the male teachers especially outright condemn effeminate male students as potential gays and should be toughened up by bullying and be forced to play more sports to make them manly. They don't care that almost all these effeminate boys I know here are highly brilliant kids. They are imperfect male students because they were not manly. Girls can be quite complicated since their appearance are all similar and they wear hijab. I have so much trouble trying to remember their names, but you can generally see the outspoken ones, the sporty athletic type, the religious shy ones who won't even speak in the class or interact with male classmates. And there's this clique Y things. For some reason sometimes my lessons won't work well because they weren't grouped with their usual friends. Charismatic students tend to shine in the class alright. Charismatic, religious students, Marizo. Even in an American high school I caught flack for hanging out with girls. It's really weird logic. Oh, he hangs out with girls all the time. He must be so gay, because spending time with ladies is the gayest thing I can think of. I'm that super gay dude who's always hanging out with more women than the rest of the guys. I'm not a teacher but I work with groups of kids. There are certain kids that you can tell just always get left out bullied and I try to make sure they're included. You can't always push that though without making things worse. I do call out kids who are bullying though. I tend to pull them aside the first time and explain that I don't put up with that bulls and they'd better straighten up. Although, I word it in a more kid-friendly way, they know what I mean. If they continue I do call them out in front of everyone. Hey, Nancy, that's not cool, and such. I've found after a while it actually becomes uncool to be a little butthole. I feel okay about that. Yet, the threat of not being cool is so much more effective than the threat of being a bad person. It's a little depressing. Actually, they don't care that what they do is wrong, but they do care about being ridiculed. I had one teacher who, at the end of the year, didn't count me absent when I was out because she didn't know I existed. Teacher, is anyone absent? Friend, Triceratopsist. Teacher, Triceratops. I didn't really like her anyway, but that was only one person. I only had a couple teachers who would go out of their way to interfere with students' lives. It's easy to tell who's popular. Bullying is often much more discreet. Not to say that I never see it or infer that it happened, but no one wants to be a rat, and bullied kids often try to avoid further embarrassment by not telling a teacher. LPT. Tell teachers if you see bullying happen, even if it's after the fact. You really can make a big difference in someone's life. Bullying can cause lasting problems in a person's life. Only crappy thing is when teachers fully ignore bullying right in front of them. I wasn't popular nor was I a top student, but then I was only 8 years old. A teacher pulled me out of a class, brought me into the year below and asked me to spell which at the time I had no idea. I couldn't tell you now what letters I threw out there but it was way off. The whole class laughed and I wanted to cry. She then led me back into the other class. No idea why. I later heard she died. I laughed and got on with my life with a bit more of smile on my face. Sometimes the biggest bully is the one behind the big desk. A lot of my female teachers appeared to be very desperate to belong to the in crowd. My high school was super cliquish and the teachers kind of fanned the flames, letting popular girls pick on everyone else or make comments about others without fear of discipline. I was getting my butt chewed out by some popular chick who didn't want me sitting near her because her friend always sat in that seat. She called me all sorts of nasty names in front of the teacher. I finally told her to shut the frick up, and I'm the one who got into trouble over it. Stuff like that happened a lot. Wanna know something? This doesn't necessarily go away in college. I am in a series of classes where several of the girls who are friends with each other are actually pretty mean to me. It got to the point where I went to one of my professors and told him that it made me hate going to class and that I dreaded participating. He said he had noticed and that I should keep participating. He would attempt to avoid activities which would require us to work together, which I appreciated more than an attempt to make them like me, because I am honestly not interested in convincing mean girls who never grew out of it to like me. He did assure me that my contributions are relevant and meaningful, and it has made just speaking up and not caring about their reaction a lot easier actually. Seriously, having someone confirm that they noticed and encourage me to keep trying was probably the best thing that could have happened. Something I will definitely keep in mind if I am ever teaching. Somewhat unrelated, but it's a fantastic teacher story, so I'm going to share it anyway. In high school, I was going through some fairly unsettling crap with my real dad, the details of which are not worth getting into. Anyway, I got to know one of my teachers very well. She became the adult confidant that, up until then, was mostly just my mother and stepdad, and I owe her everything for the support and outlet she gave me during that time. Moving on, I took said teacher's history class my junior year, which was all around fantastic, because she was well known as being one of the coolest teachers around. A guy friend of mine that I'd known for a while but started spending more time with, as friends, was also in that history class. Ms. Case started bugging me constantly about the crush I had developed on this friend. So about midway through the year, she gets the ridiculous idea to ask the both of us, me and him, to babysit her kids one night. Long story short, he agreed, which was weird. When we got there, the kids were already asleep. She showed us to a bowl of popcorn, a movie in the couch, and left on her merry way. While nothing actually happened that night, said gentleman and I eventually dated briefly towards the end of the year, and Ms. K could not have been more thrilled. TLDR. Kick-ass high school teacher was also a kick-ass wing woman. As one of those kids that was bullied, I think teachers could do a lot more to help those kids out. I'll be completely honest when I say that to me it felt like many of the teachers knew and just couldn't care less. A few of them even participated in it. When you're a kid in that situation, it's not that you're embarrassed or anything like that that stops you from telling somebody. It's the fact that it's obviously going on right in front of the teachers and they don't do a thing about it. If they won't stop it when they see it, why would they care if I said something? That was a few years ago for me, but I imagine not much has changed. You know that one little butthole that everyone hates? Not a bullying sort of thing, but the one that all those annoying childhood friend memes are about? Yeah, that kid. We hate him too. My girlfriend and her mom are teachers at the same school, and yes, they discuss which kids are the better looking ones, which ones are the nerds, which ones they like and which ones they don't. They also get told a whole bunch of stuff too to help them with these opinions. Easily, I teach kids who can't really speak English and I don't really speak Korean, and it's not difficult to identify the roles of different students. I'm sure it's even more obvious for teachers in their native language culture. I split up the bullies from the students who get bullied, scatter the smart motivated students across the room to encourage others, utilize the popular kids as activity leaders, etc. Understanding the personality of your individual students and class as a whole is incredibly important in education and classroom management. I was not popular at all. Chubby, learning disabled, and didn't come from a family with money. I wore clothes from the Goodwill and grew up in a trailer. I was picked last, made fun of about everything. I suffered from depression and tried to hurt myself twice. I was always student of the week the last week of school too. Teachers would yell at me. Anyways, I lost weight, Went to college, got a job, a nice car, and I'm building a house now. I got 2 good looking babies and a great husband. The people who made my life heck are now living their own heck. My goal is to raise loving, empathetic, good caring children. Yes, I knew exactly who was cool and who wasn't. I also had the realization that I know little to nothing about what they find interesting and vice versa for the most part. I liked to encourage kids that weren't popular and do what I could, but at the end of the day they had to live in their world. The saddest part was how I had to interact with the popular kids. They were typically charismatic, charming, and confident. They were alphas, so sometimes it was a pleasure to interact with them, but they could also equally make class heck. I had 30-40 students per class and I had no choice but to make friends with the alphas or nothing would get done. Easy, the gingers, the fat kids, the ones with glasses, the lanky nerds, the kids with volcanic acne, the emos, etc. Stereotypes work. Actually, on a serious note, I wonder if the number of people who would get bullied because of having glasses has gone down now, considering glasses isn't really a rare thing these days. Not a teacher, but I was never popular, and none of the teachers treated me as well as the popular kids. I don't know if these teachers were bullied when they were younger and felt the need to cater to the popular ones as a sort of reliving the childhood dream, because it made the popular kids like them better as teachers, but it sucked. I remember in music class in elementary, we were also taught dance. No one wanted to dance with me and no one noticed, not even the teacher. I quietly brought it up to him and he asked the class if anyone would like to dance again. A bunch of girls leapt up excitedly, planning who would dance with whom. When the teacher added, "Who would like to dance with D-Jims?" they all muttered a collective "oh" and sat down quickly again. I was in the front of the class, standing alone. There was no rebuke. There were no kind words. After that I began to notice the way teachers treat unpopular kids compared to the popular ones. Even in subtle ways there was a difference, and it was never in my favor no matter how good I tried to be. TLDR. Teachers are buttholes. In middle school, one of the more popular kids was bullying one of the quieter, weirder kids in our grade. The poor guy was bullied quite often by this kid, who was an absolute dickhead, and I think the teachers had began to notice. Anyway, one day the quiet kid decides to stand up for himself. The more popular kid pushes him and tries to entice him to fight, so the quiet kid obliges and punches him hard in the face. The two go at it for a couple of minutes, until the teacher runs over and arm tackles the popular kid to the ground. Doesn't say a word but "you're coming with me," picks him up by his shirt collar, and drags him to the principal. Neither the teacher nor the quiet kid got in any trouble. Everyone clapped. TLDR. Justice. Yes, even at the university college level, TA who became a professor here. However, you would think that the whole "I am paying to be here" would solve this. Seldom it doesn't. Pre-med students are the worst. Oh, I am pre-med, therefore I am entitled to all the things including your own personal phone number, your local employees only hangout, etc. Smart people bully the former bullies. I've seen it so many dang times it gets old. People will go to great lengths to screw someone over, especially those who they think wronged them in the past, by some misguided way. Let's see. Sabotaging others' work. Check. Accusing someone of cheating. Check. Accusing someone of harassment. Check. I quit assigning collaborative work assignments because there is always that guy who gets left out. I call him hamster smell guy or midlife crises lady because they could never get a fair shake. So you could say yes. I picked up on this stuff all the time. I knew who the bullshitters were, who the slackers were, and who really put out, grade-wise, for people in my course, Introduction to Geology, Geological History, etc. There were many assignments given, but the catch was I never graded people on how they did numerically, but how they performed if put on the spot, which in turn takes the student integrity thing to a new level. Till this kinda crap goes on behind the scenes with other staff professors too. They can't generally be fired for it. Thank you tenure, but still manage to really skirt the rules, bordering on criminal behavior. Oh, your research paper just came out and didn't put me in the acknowledgements. Person's input was, "Go find this book, let me go key your brand new Jaguar outside." Then, oh my god, we have that one professor that insists you call them doctor, even though fellow professors of the same educational level all address each other on first name bases. And that's why I quit my teaching position, went into industry and only offer private tutoring. Yes, we know. I used to teach high school English. It was very clear which kids were popular, which were bullies, which were bullied. And yes, I freaking hated the bullies and did everything in my unfortunately limited power to make it stop. The kids who were more fragile, less popular, off the beaten path, I talked to them a lot after school, got involved sponsoring student clubs, college bowl type stuff, math team, and other activities to try to ensure everybody's integration. Respect. 30 plus years later, I'm FB friends with some of the kids who were unpopular or had troubles. Happy to report that they are great people with full lives and they only think of HS as a blip on their radar. Yes, and it's even worse when you can tell why they get picked on. And it's even worse when it irks you too, that is, the disruptive kid or the extra stinky kid : Teacher in France here. Yes, we know who's popular. We know who's going out with who. We catch glances and we know what they mean. We intercept some notes between students and read them. We're curious about all that because we are interested by what's happening in the class. If we understand the dynamics of the class, we can adapt better to it and be generally more efficient. We obviously know who gets bullied. Come on. Most teachers have been bullied themselves. What do I do with the information? I try to catch a bully in the act to just humiliate him the best way I can find. I try not to take side with the bullied, because I just can't protect the kid all the time and the bully would just take revenge on him when I'm not here. Nobody likes bullies, but teachers, we freaking hate them. They're bringing the whole class down and it takes a lot of time and energy to heal all the pain they've caused. If we can at all get rid of a bully, I wish we could do more to fight bullies. Sometimes we're just powerless, especially when the said bully just do not fear or learn from any sanctions. As a teacher in South Korea, I do notice the different dynamics. You have the smart kid, the class clown, the popular kid, etc. In every class, everyone seems to take on some sort of role. I have one student in particular who comes to mind. She is a tomboy, an athlete and a class clown. She is a bit pugnacious and rowdy during class. You can tell she isn't one of the popular girls. She acts like one of the boys and everyone knows it. She's definitely rough around the edges and acts up during class. Yet, I have a soft spot for her even when she tries to hop over desks. I don't really do too much with the information I gather from my observations. I take mental notes. Sometimes I'll be a bit softer to the ones who have it a little bit rough when it comes to how they're treated by their peers. For the really snobby popular students, and there's always the one student that drives me mad, I notice that tend to be a little stricter with them. It all depends on how that student is and just how much I can empathize with them. Absolutely. Having taught high school, it was painfully clear which students were popular and which kids were struggling socially. I felt a moral obligation to make sure all kids in my classroom felt validated and welcome, and tried to combat cafeteria politics from permeating into an English class. For teachers trying to work against this, too, I recommend pre-assigning groups for projects so that kids who don't usually interact with each other have to talk and collaborate. In most cases, you won't see some breakfast club bulls, but students will realize that that weird kid is actually kind of funny, or the basketball player has some profound crap to say about Lord of the Flies, too. As a kid I was constantly being picked on, openly talked negatively about, yelled at across the hall. The teacher didn't give a frick. She also singled me out and picked on me as well. Nobody gave me a break. I hated being at school, was suicidal at one point as well. Once I got out of school I never wanted to go back and so I didn't pursue higher education and I don't know if I ever will. If you are a teacher at a school you need to strike down hard on bullies. I'd never want anyone to be in my shoes. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.